to GONKCAST, a long-form discussion podcast about the music of English electronic duo Autechre, album by album, EP by EP. I'm Gabe.
I'm Dan.
And this is a bonus episode for premium subscribers, counting down our favorite new music releases of 2026 so far, plus a few favorite archival releases and a few of our listeners' 2026 favorites as well.
And if you're listening to the free preview right now and want to hear the whole thing, head on over to patreon.com/GONKCAST, where $5 a month gets you access to every one of our bi-weekly bonus episodes on Autechre adjacent music, plus the opportunity to vote on the album we're going to cover next.
Also, don't forget, you can always hear a little extra from our bonus episodes over on our YouTube channel. Links in the show notes. If you want to listen a little further before you decide if you want to subscribe. Our next main episode, by the way, free for everybody as always, will be on Autechre's LSEC 5, finally wrapping up our months-long revisit, installment by installment of Autechre's LSEC project. So revisit LSEC 5 for yourself. Send us your thoughts, gonkcastpod@gmail.com. Dan, should we get into the episode?
Let's do it.
All right, to start things off, I just wonder if you have any kind of big picture thoughts on 2026 in music so far. I got to say, I'm the kind of person who's always saying that every year is another great year in music, but this has been kind of a shit year. I got to be perfectly honest. Like, it has been, I feel slow. I have every confidence in the world that it's going to pick up in this last, like it's going to be a banger last 6 months here. But what are you feeling about 2026?
Yeah, I was thinking it's slow, but I also, you know, as I've gotten older, I don't keep up as much with like new stuff. I realize I've sort of have gotten where I rely on end of the year lists a lot, you know, so I kind of find a lot of stuff in, you know, December. kind of time. Right. So I wasn't sure if it was just me being a little out of touch or if it genuinely is slow, but I was thinking it was slow too.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty religiously follow the new music releases still. It's like, you know, one of the highlights of my week is Friday morning. I wake up and I comb through everything that's come out. You know, I follow the recommendations of like a couple Substacks and stuff throughout the week. I can... You know,
do that.
I just feel like I often get enough on those new music releases to kind of like get me through the week. I feel like I'm being a little greedy when I start, you know, jonesing for I want more. But this year has been just a lot of like really slow weeks, I feel. Yeah, I don't know what the deal is with that. Of course, there's been a couple banger releases, but you know, I always say, I don't know, I'm going to piss somebody off with this, but I always feel like if you go to rate your music and you look at the charts, and there's still a bunch of metal records, it's not been a good year, you know?
You know, it's funny you say that because I think like rate your music is kind of like my, you know, main bread and butter of music hangout these days. And I was wondering, like, is it just because like the younger people that are joining are making this metal? Every time I look at the charts, I have to do, you know, on the side, I have a subscriber account. You do minus black or minus all metal, all genre type, you know, get rid of the metal, get rid of the TV soundtracks, and then you're good to go. But yeah, it cuts a lot out right now.
And I'm open to, I mean, I always check out the kind of highly profiled metal releases. It's not usually my thing, but I have felt like even the stuff that's really been hyped this year has been like just totally replacement level to me. I don't know. That's just how I was feeling. I've also been interested. Have you ever checked out, I can't remember if I asked you about this, but you know, there's like this new kind of site that's basically just rate your music, but a little bit more modern layout and seems to appeal to slightly different user base. albumoftheyear.com. Have you checked this out?
Oh, I've heard of it. I haven't like dug deep into it, but I've seen it.
Yeah, I've sort of enjoyed, you know, like combing through that because there's a lot of overlap, but then like just a slightly different user base where there isn't, you know, the metal thing is just not as big, but there is a lot more interest in, I think, pop and kind of newer stuff like that. But I don't know, it's kind of, I've appreciated getting the two perspectives. Of course, I always follow, you know, I always hype up like Philip Sherburn's Substack is one of my favorites. I still read The Wire every month, which is one of my favorite places to get music. Trying to think what else. You know, Pitchfork, I've said this before on the podcast, but I think Pitchfork is great if you sort by 8.0 plus which they still let you see, even though they've paywalled the scores. And then if you listen to everything that gets above an 8, but not a BNM, I always feel that's like some of the best stuff of the year. Am I forgetting anything? I mean, I always check out The Quietus. I always check out Resident Advisor. I know they are a little divisive, but their electronic music, I always seem to enjoy. Am I missing anything? Good places to search?
No, I basically I used Philip Sherburne's Substack, The Wire, and Rate Your Music, and then I'll check out some wider year-end lists.
Yeah. Well, okay. So that was all like preamble to just ask you: was it difficult then to put your list together? Your midway point list?
Not really, because there are like a handful of like really good releases this year. So that kind of filled out the top couple pretty easily. And then, I had like a couple honorable mentions. It was really like kind of figuring out what number 5 was going to be, not for lack of records, but for, like which one do I, want to kick to the honorable mention, and which one do I want to fully talk about. So I would say no, even though we just spent 15 minutes complaining about it.
Yeah, I mean, my like approach to this, my test is usually to just the stuff that kind of hangs around. I guess I have a tendency, to be quite honest, when I first hear something, to be like, holy shit, this is the best thing ever. This is going on my end of the year list for sure. And then it just kind of like drifts away and I forget about it. You know what I mean?
Never hear it again. Yeah, I do that too.
Yes. So my test is usually like, does it hang around? Does it kind of like define the year, or like a key part of the year for me? And so, yeah, for me, it was kind of like obvious the stuff that has hung around. That being said, like we were talking about earlier, I feel that this year got off to such a slow start that there was a bunch of stuff that I kind of thought would make my list. But then going back to it, I realized, you know what? I only spent so much time with this because there was nothing else at the time. I just was listening over and over, and I think it was just kind of by default. But I feel like now, yeah, it's picking up steam. I want to remain the optimist and say that I think more stuff is coming. I also wanted to ask, do you think, and this is kind of a leading question because you had said something that scandalized me on that note a little bit. Do you think your list is going to change a lot in the second half of the year, or do you feel like the stuff that you picked, these are probably going to end up in your top? Because when we'll do like we did, last year or early this year, I guess, like our end of the year full list. And I think, we only did top 5 today, but we'll do like full top 10 and stuff like that. But so we'll have new stuff to talk about regardless. But do you see a lot of change upcoming for you?
I mean, I want to say no, but there's always something could come out. But when I was looking at like the releases that I'm sort of waiting on and everything, and I don't really see anything dethroning like the top maybe 4, or 4 or 5 could maybe drop down a little bit. But no, I don't foresee a lot of change, but I would happily welcome it.
It's just so funny because you were like, we were talking about like doing this episode, and you were like, well, I don't know, I feel like my top 5 is pretty solid, and if we do an album of the year episode later, I'll just have to repeat everything I said. And I was like, what are you so pessimistic for? You don't think anything's going to come out?
I'm a pessimistic person.
Yeah. So like I was saying, I feel like I'm expecting better stuff to come, and
I definitely like I said, I once those big year-end lists, like especially like The Wire, and I always find 15-20 records I didn't sure. know about, and usually it's January, February, I'm still going through the list. Your list is too late at that point. You ever start doing them in March, I think.
Yes, yeah, I know. Yeah, but like I said, I'm just always surprised about the stuff that does end up sticking with me. So, the stuff that's like on my list today, I don't know, there's every chance in the world that all 5 of these records could just vanish for the rest of the year. I don't know, but or they could stick around. I'm not sure. But with that, I guess we should start getting into our list. We picked 5, like I said, we each picked 5 records. We'll do a longer list for the full end of the year. But we also picked honorable mentions. I guess if you're a sharp sharp listener, you'll realize that means we really picked like a top 6, I guess. But we both picked an honorable mention we want to highlight, an archival release, reissue we want to highlight, and then we got a bunch of stuff from some of the listeners who wrote in with their list, their favorites we want to talk about. So lots of good records to talk about today. Of course, this is the I forgot to mention, ask you up front, but this is we're an Autechre podcast. We're Autechre obsessives, but I don't think either of us thought specifically about this will only appeal to Autechre fans, right?
Oh, no, not at all. I just purely and selfishly thought about myself making those lists.
All right. Yeah. Well, with that, I think it'll be a funny transition for you to say your number 5, which is what?
Yeah, that's true. My number 5 is Shane Parrish's Autechre guitar.
Okay. Shane Parrish's Autechre guitar. Yeah, I very nearly put this on my list. It didn't make it, I guess, just because I sort of decided, like, it was an edge case for me, and I decided, I bet everybody listening to this has already heard it, you know what I mean? So maybe I'll spotlight something else. But why did you end up picking this one?
Well, that makes me look bad. Like, no, I mean, like you said, thinking about like records that like hang around, because this one, the honorable mention, have both been sort of hanging around and things. I do a lot of reading, so like this is perfect for that. And it's just it's a great record. Like not just because obviously like on the surface of just like the idea of transcribing and playing like these Autechre songs on guitar is like, we've talked about it 100 times on the podcast already, but like, it's so crazy, such a like insane concept. But I think like, even if you like dig deeper past that, I mean, I don't think you even have to know Autechre. I think these are just like genuinely great recordings. Like I love Shane's like style of playing, the sounds of like the rooms he's in and stuff. Like there's some kind of like the sounds of outside or something in one of the tracks and everything. I love this like kind of revitalization of like American primitivism and everything. So I think like obviously on the surface there's this thing of Autechre guitar, but like I really truly think it goes beyond that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, this is easily one of my favorites of the year. I listen to it a lot, and I think it's because it has this weird like every occasion kind of quality. Yeah, you can listen when you're reading, but it's great like to put on outside or something to like hang out.
It's good patio listenable music. Yeah.
Great patio music. I mean, yeah, it's very like, I mean, even, my wife, like a lot of, I know wives of listeners to this podcast hates Autechre, and yet she loves this record.
My wife doesn't know that she doesn't mind this record, but she doesn't.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah, so she's often like humming the, the tunes, very musical. And yeah, so it's cool because it has like that kind of, there's like a first couple listens that is, it's almost like a version of process music or something, like you were saying, like just the sheer curiosity of like, how's he going to do this? Or like what, you're sort of listening to it on that level. And then it just becomes like a great, American primitivist guitar record. We talked about this earlier in the year. We were lucky enough to interview Shane, which you can go back and check that out if you're a new listener. I got to see Shane do this record in full a month or two ago. And I had mentioned at the time that it was just, there was something about it that like you could see, or at least he was doing a good job pretending like that these are fun to play. And there's something like hypnotic and like the way that the loops kind of interlock and stuff. It's like, and also, my favorite thing about this record that, it's one of my favorite things about especially early Autechre, where it's like, you feel like you go inside, like there's a main melody and then you kind of go deeper into it, and how it'll just sort of like, it'll double in tempo and you kind of like appreciate, there's like all this space for all this like kind of, there was an intricate like second level to this melody underneath it, and I didn't hear it until he sort of like brought it out or whatever. And then even the way he pulls off that Autechre thing, early Autechre thing, where it's like by the end of the track all 3 loops are playing simultaneously and all interlocked together and everything. So that was just like, it just seemed like when I saw him do it live, like it just is like fun, like to kind of lock in and kind of dig into these pieces. So absolutely love this one. You got more, or should I get into my number 5?
No, let's go for it.
All right, so I've got Ibrahim Alpha Jr., Infinite Black Inside. This is a record, I guess, like I guess he's a bit of a kind of a techno, old timer a little bit. If you look at his discography, he's got a lot of singles and stuff from the 90s, but I guess he had like trouble with the law. He did some time in jail. Then he had like serious health problems. And so he sort of made this kind of return to doing, his version of techno music. And this seems, to me to be like kind of the biggest acclaim he's gotten, kind of coming back, this sort of legend. But, he was new to me. It's like, I'm always hesitant to use this word because I don't like totally understand what it means, but wonky techno, they call it, is kind of the genre. It's like, it's like techno, but it's very IDM sounding techno, I think. And another thing I specifically like about it is like, it's very trip hop sounding, music. Like when you listen, some of his melodies have that kind of like hypnotizing, almost like DJ Shadow or like Portishead style kind of melody. Another thing I often find myself thinking about is like, I don't know, this is a weird comp, but like, when you listen to Black Dog's Spanners album, the first track, I can't remember what it's called, but it's kind of like this moody trip hoppy like IDM, and I just love it. And then actually the record never does that again. And I've always felt like I wish there was a whole record of that particular track style. This is kind of like a whole record of that particular track style at long last. I really like how it's got like I don't know, the drum programming. It's like really kind of, it's got this kind of sampled sound of these like very kind of visceral, like physical drums. Like there are tracks like great track title, by the way, Naked Lunch Break. There's another track called Drum Slinger, and it just has like, it'll do this kind of like tumbling, drums, like sampling. There was one, I think on that Drum Slinger track, he's sampling like a Ghanaian djembe, if I'm pronouncing that right. It's just like got this kind of cool drum sounds that you haven't quite heard. And just kind of like a cool groove. I mean, there was another thing I wrote down, which is like, you remember we did a whole bonus episode on Aphex Twin's drug use, and there's that one song, Orban EQ Tracks, that is so cool, but it's like frustratingly, it's like a minute long, and then it just goes away. Like there's, a track like the track called Capture. It kind of sounds like that vibe for a whole track. So it's like, I don't know. It's hopefully I'm giving some good comps. Did you check this out? What did you think of it?
Yeah, I did. This was new to me. I hadn't heard of him or this record before. It was pretty cool. I liked it. The drums are what I noted the most in looking at it as well. I really liked on Drum Slinger that like kick drum, or maybe it's that djembe you're talking about. But like it gets going. It like starts sounding almost like an engine or something. And I really the Naked Lunch Break, that one too. That was probably my favorite on the record. I like it. It's like stuck in that loop of like a drum fill. It just feels like the drums are like falling down the stairs over and over and over and over kind of thing. But then like, there's this like sort of calm organ playing over top of it. That was pretty neat. I like this one. I don't know, like, if it's going to make my list or anything, but it's one that I'll probably stick around with and keep listening to.
Yeah, it's weird. I keep listening to this one. Like, actually, I put it just at the edge of my list here at number 5. And then I of course, listened to the albums I picked like a number of times this week to kind of get ready for this episode. And I was like, man, I feel like I should put this higher, or maybe, it'll end up being higher like later on in the year or whatever, because I just really love it. I mean, and yeah, just to emphasize, it's like the tracks tend to feel like these short little vignettes. Like they're always like about 3 minutes long, and they kind of, it's like a little world that just kind of comes into being and then kind of fades out and goes away. I really like that kind of cool vibe. And so I totally forgot. You thought you were getting away with it, but I had asked us to like pick our favorite track to recommend as part of our discussion. Forgot to ask you about Shane Parrish. I'll come back to that in a second, but I had picked track 2, Latent. And I say he got away with it because he didn't want to do it, because Dan is such an album purist that he hates even having to choose a favorite song. But, I went with track 2, Latent, on this record. Ibrahim Alpha Jr. The whole list will be in the show notes of this episode and everything. It's just like kind of got a cool, like kind of, I don't know, woozy reverb drone. It kind of reminds me of some of those like really dreamy, honestly, like Autechre tracks from like Chorustus or something, where the reverb's real heavy. But then he's added this kind of like, there's like a real steady kind of hi-hat groove, and honestly like a jazzy kind of bass line I would compare to like, I don't know, a Tribe Called Quest beat or something. And then there's great like vibes on it, when a vibraphone just rings out and it's just kind of like hanging there. I mean, so hopefully that gives you a sense of what this record's like if you haven't checked it out. Now let me circle back before I forget. If you had to pick a favorite track off of Shane Parrish's Autechre guitar, what would you choose?
You see, this one, I was kind of glad you did skip it, because this one was like the hardest one to pick. And so I went with bike because I mean, I think that's just like, it's a classic Autechre track. Shane does such a like good job playing it. I think it's like, if you are curious about this, I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably already heard it, but like, if you're curious about this, like that's the one that's going to like either sell you on it or, it's not going to be your thing. So I went with that one.
Good pick. I think I didn't really actually think about what I would pick for your picks myself, but I might go bike. I feel like maybe Eggshell is another just like great.
You literally can't pick wrong. That's the problem.
You can.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll move on to your number 4, which is what?